My new work has been released. Welcome everyone to read my work in tomato novel. I hope everyone can enjoy it. Your attention is the driving force behind my writing, and I will strive to tell every story well. Chapter 1. Unnamed Draft. You are listening at novelfull.audio. One day, the owner of Bai Island passed by a cliff with Bai Xiao, and suddenly heard the cries of babies. Mr. Bai stopped the coachman and said, "Stop the white kettle. Do you hear anything? I really wish I could hear the child crying." White Cauldron looked around and suddenly discovered a baby. "Island Lord, there is a baby on the tree." White Cauldron, "Come on, take the child down." "Okay, Island Master." "Island Master, please take a look. Whose child is this from? Why are you here?" "Island Owner, I think this child's family is in trouble. This place is not peaceful, and the child's clothes are not cheap." "That's it, Baifu. When you get back to the island, take someone around here to inquire if anyone has lost their child or if anyone has messed up with a robber." Bai Xiao was sitting in the hall playing with the 9 rings when the White Island Lord walked in with a baby in his arms. "Dad, you're back. Dad, what's in your arms?" "Shower, Dad is back. Dad picked up a baby on the way. Dad, I want to take a look. Wow, she's so cute. Dad, I want her to be my sister, and I want her to play with me. Dad has sent someone to search for her family. If they can't be found, let her be your sister, okay? Dad, you're so kind. Sister, I'm your sister. I'll treat you well." After a few months, the owner of Bai Island did not find the family of the baby. The owner of Bai Island adopted the baby and named it Bai Qiao. Bai Qiao grew up slowly following Bai Xiao from a young age. The owner of Bai Island also treated Bai Qiao as if she were his own daughter. But the good times didn't last long, and Bai Dao passed away due to illness. From then on, Bai Xiao and Bai Qiao relied on each other and relied on each other. At this time, Bai Xiao was 15 years old and Bai Qiao was 9 years old. To support the family business of Nuada, Bai Xiao went to sea from then on. From then on, Bai Qiao often stayed alone at the seaside, waiting for the sailboat with white characters on its flagpole. 5 years have passed, and Bai Qiao is slowly learning to manage the affairs on the island. On this day, large ships sailed from the sea. Bai Jian sat in the hall, listening to reports from various managers. At this moment, a letter came from outside the hall. Bai Jian opened the letter and a smile appeared on her face, saying, "If you have nothing important today, we will discuss it tomorrow." The stewards looked at each other and said, "Yes." Bai Caoxia called Sangji, "Sangji, Sister A will be back in a few days. Quickly lead someone to clean Sister A's room and ask the butler to purchase more ingredients that Sister A likes to eat." Sangji quickly responded, "I'll go now." Bai Caoxia stood up and looked towards the direction of the sea, saying, "Ah, Jia has finally returned." A few days later, Bai Qiao led people to wait by the seaside early. Suddenly, a large boat came from afar and saw a handsome girl standing at the bow of the boat. "Sister, I'm here." Bai Qiao ran towards the direction of the boat. "Slow down, don't fall." Bai Qiao hugged Bai Xiao and said, "Sister, let's go home." "Sangji, take them and pack everything." The next day, Bai Qiao arrived at Qingfeng Garden, looked at Shi Xian, and asked, "Sister, you're up. As for Miss Second, Miss First has just woken up and is waiting for you." Bai Xiao walked in and said, "Ah, Jia wakes up early, why don't you sleep a little longer?" Bai Xiao looked at Bai Xiao and smiled slightly, saying, "I guess today's breakfast was made with sugar. I want to try the craft of sugar." Bai Caoxian said, "Sister, I need to taste my craft carefully to see if it has regressed or if it meets your taste." Bai Xiao said, "You don't need to taste it. I know my little sister's craftsmanship definitely suits my taste. It's really delicious." Bai Jiao couldn't help but smile and snuggled up in Bai Xiao's arms. "Sister, you know how to coax me. Sister, have you missed me for over a year? Bai Xiao said, of course I miss you. Think of me, why don't you come back soon? I thought your birthday was coming up soon, so I went to choose a birthday gift for you. Really, what kind of gift is it? I can't give it to you now. On your birthday, you'll know. Bai Xiao pouted and shouted, sister. Bai Xiao smiled silently and looked at Bai Xiao quietly. Bai Xiao muttered, okay, okay. If you don't say it, then don't say it. When it's my birthday, I'll know, humph. Bai Xiao sat up and had breakfast with Bai Xiao. At this moment, Sanji reported, Miss Eyre, the stewards are waiting in the hall for you to discuss matters on the island. Bai Xiao put down the dishes and said, you ask them to come back tomorrow, I need to accompany my sister today. As Sanji was about to leave, Bai Xiao called out to her and said, Tang Tang, go ahead and get busy. You don't need to spend time with your sister. I don't want to go. Sister doesn't want me to be with you, I want her to be with me. I haven't seen her in a year, Bai Xiao gently caressed Bai Xiao's face and said, I'm sorry, Tang Tang. Can you accompany me, sister? I haven't seen Tang Tang handle things much before. Bai Xiao took Bai Xiao's hand and smiled slightly. Sister, never say sorry to me. Sister has nothing wrong with me, I just want to spend more time with her. Bai Xiao stood up and extended her hand to Bai Xiao. Can I invite the beautiful Miss Bai Xiao to handle affairs together? Peony Lactiflora put her hand in Bai Xiaoya's hand, stood up and said, of course, it's my honor. The two sisters came to the hall, and Bai Xiaoya asked someone to add a chair beside the main seat. The two of them sat down together, and at this moment, someone came to report on many matters on the island. Bai Xiao quietly watched Bai Xiao handle the matter on the side. After the matter was resolved, the stewards all stepped down, and one of the young stewards said, today, Miss Eyre has a really good temper, and her smiles have also increased. An elderly butler said, you came late and didn't know much. The one sitting next to Miss Eyre today is Miss Dou. With Miss Dou present, Miss Eyre has a good temper. Recently, if you have any mishandling in business, hurry up and go at this moment. As long as it's not something that happens, Miss Eyre won't scold you. The young steward bowed his hand to the old steward and said, thank you for your guidance. I will go back and organize it now. The young steward hurriedly ran back. Chapter 2. Growing Up. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the hall, Bai Xiao and Bai Xiao talked about Bai Xiao's 14-year-old birthday. Tang Tang, your birthday is coming soon. In another year, you will be at your age. Time flies so fast, they said. Bai Jiao smiled and said to Bai Xiao, when I reach the hairpin, I will become an adult. I can protect my sister. In the past, my sister protected me, and in the future, I will protect my sister. Bai Xiao's eyes turned slightly red, and she nodded heavily, gently stroking Bai Xiao's hair with her hand. Sister, wait. But on this basis, I hope my candy will always be happy and happy. On the day of Bai Xiao's birthday, Sanji led someone early to dress up Bai Xiao and said to her, Miss Eyre looks really beautiful in this outfit today. Miss Dou has a good eye. Bai Xiaoxia stood up and said to Sanji, sister's vision is certainly the best. I want her to take a look. As she spoke, she ran out, with Sanji chasing Bai Xiao from behind. Miss, please slow down, she said. Bai Xiao hurriedly ran to the Qingfeng garden and collided with the white peony that was coming out. Peony Lactiflora calmed down and said, Tang Tang, why are you in such a hurry? I'm going to find you to send longevity noodles to our little birthday star. Bai Xiaoya smiled at the white peony and said, I can't wait. I want to eat the longevity noodles that Sister A made for me. I also want to show Sister A how nice I look in this dress. Bai Xiao nodded at Bai Xiao's forehead and smiled, You can't be so anxious next time. Let me carefully see if Tang Tang looks good in this outfit. Bai Xiao stood in front of Bai Xiao, turned around, and looked at Bai Xiao. Well, it looks amazing. There's no one in the world who looks better than my family's candy. A bright smile bloomed on Bai Xiao's face, and at this moment, Sang Ji and her companion said, wishing Miss Air a happy birthday. The white peony smiled at the mulberry branches and said, give you a month's worth of silver. Sister, eat longevity noodles. I wish my birthday a happy and safe one. Bai Xiao said, thank you, sister. In the evening, Bai Xiao held something and said to Bai Xiao, Tang Tang, see if you like the birthday gift that Sister A gave you. When Bai Xiao opened the box, she saw a bracelet inside. Bai Xiao put a bracelet on Bai Xiao's hand and said solemnly to her, Sugar, don't take off this bracelet at any time, you know. Bai Xiao asked with a puzzled expression, why, sister? What's the use of this bracelet? This bracelet can replace me to protect you, okay? Don't take it off. I know now, sister. In the blink of an eye, the new year is coming. Laughter is everywhere on the island. Miss, there's a letter coming, said Shi Xian, holding a letter from outside. Bai Xiao took the letter and opened it, saying to Shi Xian, go outside and guard it. Yes, miss. Bai Xiao looked at the contents of the letter and couldn't help but feel a bit dazed. Bai Xiao regained consciousness and was about to burn the letter. I heard Shi Xian loudly say, Miss Air, outside the door. Bai Xiao quickly hid the letter under her pillow. After hiding, he walked out of the room with a smile on his face. As soon as Bai Xiao walked out, Bai Xiao came in and said to Bai Xiao, Sister, look at me. I wore this outfit on New Year's Eve to watch the New Year's Eve, isn't it nice? Good looking. This outfit takes advantage of my family's candy and shines even more brightly. That's good. Sister, I'll go back first. I need to change this outfit and keep it for New Year's Eve before wearing it. Sister, goodbye, Bai Xiao said. Bai Xiao said, please slow down and don't fall. Got it, hee. The laughter of the Japanese rice cake spread far and wide. Bai Xiao returned to the room and said to Shi Xian, don't tell anyone what you believe, especially Sugar, you know. Shi Xian replied, yes, miss. Shi Xian won't tell anyone. Shi Xian, you go down. I want to stay alone for a while. Please leave after careful consideration. Tang Tang is the one who nurtures the earth. I cannot let anyone take her away from me. Since I haven't found her before, Tang Tang can only be named Bai. Chapter 3. Knowing one's background. You are listening at novelfull.audio. On New Year's Eve, Bai Xiao and Bai Xiao are observing the new year. Bai Xiaoxian was talking about New Year's Day and said, Sister, I want to go shopping at Lanterns on New Year's Day, okay? Bai Xiao straightened her collar and said, every year I go shopping, you're not tired of it yet. Of course I'm not tired of browsing. Besides, I heard there are new styles this year. I want to go see them, please, sister. Is that okay? Bai Xiao smiled at Bai Xiao and said, okay. Sister, you're the best. Don't wear a high hat on me yet, I have conditions. When you watch the New Year's Eve this year, you can't fall asleep halfway through it, you must finish it. Bai Xiao said dejectedly, ah. Sister, you can change the terms. Please. Bai Xiao drank the tea in her hand and said calmly, no way, that's all I have to ask for today. If you can't do it, on New Year's Day, you'll come with me to pray for the people on the island. Bai Caoxia took a deep breath and said, if you guard, I can definitely get it. Sangji, give me strong tea. Bai Xiao looked at Bai Xiao with a smile in her eyes. At midnight, the moment the big clock on the island rang, the white grass could no longer control its drowsiness and fell heavily on its shoulder. Bai Xiao looked sideways at Bai Xiao, gently stroking her and said to Shi Xian, carry Miss Air down. Be careful not to wake her up. Yes, miss," replied softly. On the morning of the first day of the Lunar New Year, Bai Chao suddenly started cooking and shouted loudly, "Sangji. Miss, what's wrong?" Bai Chao quickly asked Shi Xian, "How did I get back yesterday?" "Forget it, Sangji. I need to get up and wash up to go find my sister." "Yes, miss," she gently called for water to wash the white grass. As soon as Shi Xian dressed the white grass neatly, the white grass hurriedly ran out. Here, Bai Xiao is preparing to pray for blessings for the people on the island on New Year's Day. Bai Xiao runs in and says, "Sister, sister. I'm here to have breakfast with you." Bai Xiao put down the things in her hand and said to Bai Xiao, "It's just waiting for you. There's your favorite milk cake this morning. Shi Xin, go and pass it on." Bai Xiao sat on a stool and smiled at Bai Xiao, saying, "Sister, can I go shopping on New Year's Day?" Bai Xiao gently tugged at Bai Xiao's sleeve and said, "Please, sister. Go ahead." Bai Xiao lightly tapped Bai Xiao's nose with her hand. Bai Xiao hugged Bai Xiao and rubbed her chin against her shoulder, saying, "Sister, you're so kind." At this moment, Shi Xian brought someone in to pass the meal. "Let's have a meal," Bai Xiao said to Bai Xiao. Replied Bai Xiao. On New Year's Day, Bai Xiao held the hand of Bai Xiao and quickly shuttled through the crowd, while Shi Xian and Sang Ji closely chased Bai Xiao and Bai Xiao from behind. Bai Xiao and Bai Xiao stopped at a juggling stall. At this moment, Bai Xiao said to Bai Xiao, "It's almost time to pray for blessings. After you finish strolling, go to the restaurant we used to often go to. I've booked a spot there. You're okay, I'll come find you after praying, okay? Sangji, follow your young lady well and don't let her make any mistakes. Sister, how old I am now, I will be fine. You go quickly. See you soon. Sangji, come on. There's something fun ahead." Sangji chased after Bai Xiao and ran forward. When she couldn't see Bai Xiao stopped and said to Sangji, "Has sister left?" Sangji replied, "Miss has already left. Miss, we have arrived at the tea house. Let's lead the way ahead," Bai Xiao said coldly. Bai Xiao and Sangji dodged all the way to the tea house. When she arrived at the tea house, Bai Xiao saw the visitor and said, "Today, I didn't call you for anything else. I want to know what my sister asked you to investigate a few days ago." "Little person, you can't say anything. Miss instructed not to tell anyone. I heard that your son wants to find a better husband, and you also want to find a good doctor for your wife. Miss Eyre, I can't betray Miss Dou. Don't force me anymore." "Why am I forcing you?" "You see, I won't do anything to harm my sister, nor will I betray her. I'm just worried that my sister will encounter something bad. You tell me, I won't tell anyone." "Well, okay. Miss asked me to check if a baby girl was lost in the capital's mansion 14 years ago." "What is the result?" said Bai Xiao. 14 years ago, the lady of the Duke was robbed on a cliff and lost the miss of the Duke's mansion. I know now, I won't tell my sister that I've met you privately. Sangji, see off the guests. The villain is leaving. Sangji, we need to strictly guard tonight's affairs, do you know?" "Yes, miss," Sangji replied. Bai Caoxia turned to her side and calmed down her emotions, saying to Sangji, "Go to the restaurant. Sister should be arriving soon." When she arrived at the restaurant, Bai Xiao saw Bai Xiao and said, "Sister, please take a look at what I have bought." Bai Xiao put down her tea cup and said to Bai Caoxia, "What a good thing. What a beautiful hairpin. I knew my sister would like it. Sister, I'll give you a hairpin." Cayratia bent her head to Peony lactiflora and said, "Sister, look. The one on my head and the one on your head are the same. This means that our two sisters will always be together." At this moment, fireworks appeared in the sky outside, and Bai Xiao said, "Sister, look at the fireworks." Bai Xiao walked up to Bai Xiao and said, "After all these years of watching, aren't you still tired?" Bai Xiao gently leaned against Bai Xiao's shoulder and said, it's not tiring. I'll never get tired of watching it with my sister for a lifetime. I don't want to spend my whole life with you. I don't want to compete with your future husband, said Bai Xiao. Bai Qiao stood up straight and said, he dares. I will definitely find someone who is knowledgeable to be my future husband. Little girl, then I'll wait. Bai Xiao said. Bai Qiao pursed her mouth and said, sister, please watch. After watching the fireworks, Bai Xiao and Bai Qiao returned home. Chapter 4. White Peony Poisoning. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. After finishing her affairs in the morning, Bai Qiao went to Bai Xiao's yard. At this moment, Bai Xiao was asking people to tidy up their things. After Bai Qiao entered, she said to Bai Xiao, sister, what are you doing? Bai Xiao said, Tang Tang, sister is about to leave. Uncle Bai said, we need to go and deliver a batch of goods for others. However, don't worry. When you're almost ready, I'll definitely be able to come back. Bai Jiao knew she couldn't stop Bai Xiao's thoughts and could only make herself look happy. She smiled and said, sister, you can't break the promise. If you break the promise, I'll ignore you. Okay, I will definitely come back as soon as possible, Bai Xiao smiled and said to Bai Qiao. On that day, the large ship at sea set sail. Sister, I'll be waiting for you at home, Bai Qiao said, grabbing Bai Xiao's hand. Bai Xiao said to Bai Qiao, after I finish going out to sea this time, I can stay at home for more time. At this moment, Uncle Bai walked over and said, Miss, it's time to set sail. I'm leaving, Bai Xiao gently stroked Bai Qiao's hair. Bai Qiao smiled at Bai Xiao, but her eyes turned slightly red. Bai Qiao waved her arm and shouted loudly, sister, you must come back safely. Don't forget to write me a letter. Bai Xiao said, go back. When you're about to reach the hairpin, I'll be back. Bai Qiao kept watching the direction of the big ship, until she couldn't see it, and continued to gaze into the distance. Sangji took a cloak and draped it over Bai Qiao, saying, Miss, go back. The sea is windy. When you're about to reach your hair, Miss will come back. Bai Qiao replied, let's go. Go find Di Kuei. Sangji replied, yes, Miss. Miss, you're looking for me. I saw a burly figure standing in the hall. Di Kuei, I need you to help me with something. You can't disclose anything about this matter. No matter who asks you, you just need to answer, I asked you to go to the capital to find a store. Di Kuei lowered his head and answered, yes. Bai Qiao leaned down and said to Di Kuei, there is a Duke of Ningguo in the capital. Go investigate whether their family lost a child 15 years ago. What are the obvious characteristics of that child? Yes, Miss. After a few months, Di Kuei returned from the capital and brought back the news. Miss, Ningguo Mansion did indeed lose a baby girl. 15 years ago, the mansion gave birth to twins, and the mansion was overjoyed. The lady of the mansion took her child, who was over half a year old, to the temple to offer incense. However, she didn't expect to encounter a robber on the way, and the baby girl was lost. Moreover, the little person even found out that there was a blue birthmark on the baby girl's left shoulder. Di Kuei arched his hand and replied. Bai Qiao's expression became nervous for a moment and he said to Di Kuei, you've worked hard. Go down and rest. Di Kuei retreated from the hall and walked outward. After waiting for Di Kuei to step down, Bai Caoxia sat down on a stool and said to Sangji, go outside the island to find someone who can remove the birthmark. After my funeral ceremony, I will find an opportunity to go out. The hammerhead of the mulberry branch retreats. Bai Qiao thought to herself, I only have one relative, my sister. I don't need anyone to disturb my sister and me in our lives. When the white rice cake and hairpin ceremony were approaching, the island was filled with joy. The people on the island are all happy for the arrival of the white rice cake and hairpin ceremony. Bai Xian is trying on the formal attire above the hairpin ceremony. The servants are reporting, and a large ship is approaching from the sea, with flagpoles of hundreds of families also inserted on board. Bai Chao ran out happily in her formal attire, with Sangji chasing after her and shouting to Bai Chao, "Miss, the formal attire hasn't been taken off yet." She said to the servant next to her, "I'm not keeping up yet." Bai Chao ran to the seaside and watched from a distance as a large ship approached on the sea. Bai Chao happily shouted, "Sister, sister. Wait until the big ship comes to a stop and get a few people off the ship." They immediately bent down and knelt down when they saw the white grass. Bai Jiao's smile disappeared from her face and she asked, "Everyone, why?" "Sister." Before Bai Jiao finished asking, she saw Bai Xiao being lifted off the boat. Bai Chao stumbled forward and saw that Bai Xiao's lips turned purple, which was clearly a sign of poisoning. Bai Jian asked, "Uncle Bai, what's wrong with you?" "Sister, how could you be in a coma?" Uncle Bai immediately knelt down to Bai Chao and cried out in pain, "I'm sorry to Miss Air, and I'm even more sorry to the island lord. Mr. This bad person plotted and was poisoned by someone. I tried to find all the doctors, but still couldn't. Uncle Bai couldn't continue and could only lower his body. Bai Chao tightly held Bai Xiao's hand and said, "Uncle Bai, let's take our sister back first. We'll talk about it when we go back." Uncle Bai said, "Yes." Bai Chao summoned all the doctors on the island to inquire about Bai Xiao, but none of them could detoxify Bai Xiao. Seeing that no one had deciphered the poison in the white peony, bursts of crying came from outside the house. Bai Xiao couldn't help but get angry and said, "If you can't cure the poison that my sister has been poisoned by, then my sister will lie in bed for a day, and you will stay at my mansion for a day. If you can't cure it, you will stay for a long time. Sangji, pass the order. No crying is allowed to spread from the mansion. If anyone cries, drive them out." Sangji was ordered to go down and took all the doctors to the side hall. And he said, "Please come up with a solution." The doctors responded, "We will definitely do our best." At night, when there was no one around, Bai Chao tightly grasped Bai Xiao's hand and said, "Sister, you will definitely be fine." As Bai Chao spoke, tears flowed out of her eyes. I saw Bai Chao tightly biting her lips, not letting herself make any sound. At this moment, Sangji walked up from outside and said, "Miss, the doctors said that there may be someone who can help Mississippi." Bai Chao lifted her head and said, "Let's go to the side hall. You have Shi Xian guarding her sister step by step, you know." Yes, Bai Chao walked to the side hall and heard the doctors say, "Miss Air, maybe one person can take care of Mr. Who is it?" "I'll send someone to invite him over now." Bai Chao hurriedly asked. The doctors turned around and one of them said, "There is a famous doctor named Su. I just don't know his name. Coincidentally, he is on our island." Bai Chao said, "Di Kue, please send someone to invite Dr. Su. Ladies and gentlemen, when Dr. Su arrives, please join him in checking your pulse." The doctor said, "Yes." After a while, Di Kue walked in with a middle-aged man and said, "Miss, Dr. Su is here." "Dr. Su, this is my second young lady." Bai Chao quickly bowed and said, "Dr. Su, I heard you are a divine doctor. Can you help my sister diagnose her pulse?" Dr. Su bowed back and said, "Miss Bai, please lead the way." "Thank you, you come with me," Bai Chao Xian said. Bai Chao led Dr. Su into Bai Xiao's bedroom and stood by her bed. Bai Chao looked nervously at Dr. Su. Dr. Su rested his pillow on the pulse of Bai Xiao and said to Bai Chao, "Miss Bai's poison can be relieved, but there is a medicine that I don't have." "What kind of medicine is it?" "No matter what medicine, I will find it," Bai Chao asked happily. Dr. Su said with a deep expression, "It's a unique life from 1,000 years ago." "The unique life of 1,000 years, murmured Bai Chao to herself. Dr. Su also said, "Living alone is not rare, what is rare is its age. I have only heard of it once in my life." Bai Chao said to Dr. Su, "Do you know where it is?" "I heard that there is such a place on the great ancestor of Ningwa mansion in the capital." Bai Chao's expression couldn't help but feel a daze as she looked at Bai Chao. Bai Chao turned to Dr. Su and said, Dr. Su, thank you. I have one more thing, it will take some time to find the medicinal herbs, but my sister's poison cannot wait. Do you have a way to save her life? Dr. Su pondered for a moment and said, I do have a method that can save Sister Ling's life. But once I use my method, if Sister Ling wakes up, I cannot guarantee her memory will be intact. Moreover, I need to place her on a cold jade bed for this method to work. Mr. Su, what does this mean? Bai Chao asked. Dr. Su said, after Sister Ling's poison is detoxified, there may be problems with her memory. Is there no other way? Bai Chao asked. Dr. Su replied, no more, this is the only way. Bai Chao said, so, there is Mr. Laosu. Chapter 5. Entering the Marquis' mansion. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. The next day, after Dr. Su had injected the white peony, Bai Chao placed it on the cold jade bed. Bai Chao held Bai Xiao's hand and said, Sister, I'm going to the capital. I'll go to the Ningwa mansion to find an antidote for my sister. Sister, I'll be back soon. Wait for me, you must wait for me. After Bai Chao came out, he gave a big gift to Dr. Su and said, Mr. Xia will save my sister's life. This is a great kindness. If you have any conditions, I will promise you. Dr. Su quickly picked up Bai Chao and said, it is our duty to save and treat people. Moreover, 3 years ago, Miss Bai gave some food and some broken silver to a starving person in Lucheng. Bai Caoxia couldn't help but ask, are you? Dr. Su smiled and said, that person is me. In fact, you saved my life first. It's just a causal cycle. Bai Caoxia could not help sobbing, when my sister wakes up, I will distribute medical kanji every year and do more good deeds. Mr. Su, you've been busy with Li Yi's work this morning. I'll have Sangji take you to rest. Dr. Su said, excuse me, Miss Bai. I'll leave first. Bai Chao smiled at Mr. Su and said, please. Bai Jian and others walked out of sight, their smiles slowly fading, and said, Shi Xian, go find Uncle Bai. I'll wait here, go quickly. Shi Xian said, yes. Miss Air, do you have any instructions? Uncle Bai leaned forward and said. Bai Chao personally helped Uncle Bai up and said to him, Uncle Bai, sister has an accident now. Only you can help me, sister. Uncle Bai left tears and said, I'm ashamed. Miss Air, just say that even if you want my life, I won't have any complaints. Uncle Bai, I can't blame you for this. Uncle Bai, what I'm going to say next is related to my sister's life and death. You must handle it well. Miss Air, please speak, Uncle Bai said. To be honest, I'm going to the capital to find my biological parents. They may have medicinal herbs that my sister needs. During my search for relatives, you need to do 3 things well. First, help me forge my identity. Second, carefully investigate Dr. Su's background. And third, be sure to guard the island and my sister. Okay. What kind of identity do I need to help you forge? Uncle Bai said. Bai Caoxian would say, my adoptive parents have both passed away, and there is no one in my family. I can read some books, but my family's fortunes have declined. I understand. I'll take care of it now. Go ahead, Uncle Bai. Everything at home will be in your hands. Sangji, I can't take you with me this time. I need you to help me with something. Miss, please give me your orders, said Sangji. Bai Chao said, I need you to keep an eye on every move on the island in the dark. I will leave you with manpower, and if there is anything wrong on the island, you can take action. I will tell everyone, and I will take you to the capital. Then, someone will disguise themselves as you and follow me. Yes, said Sangji, you go down and prepare. Shi Xin, come out now. Miss Air, what do you need me to do, said Shi Xian. Shi Xian, I know you have always been loyal to my sister. You are the last barrier for me to stay by her side. If anyone wants to harm my sister, the person I left for you will take you and her away from the island. You just need to guard your sister well and never leave, said Bai Chao. Shi Xian knelt down and said, I will thank Miss Air on behalf of Mississippi. I will guard Miss well. Even if I spare my life, I will not let Miss suffer any harm. Shi Xin, get up. I should thank you on behalf of my sister. Bai Chao gave Bai Xiao a deep glance, turned around, and walked forward. Behind her, Shi Xian knelt on the ground for a long time without getting up. A few days later, Bai Chao set off on a boat, followed by Bai Shu, Shi Xian, and others. Uncle Bai and others silently recited in their hearts. Island Lord, please bless Miss Air, and bless Miss Air with peace. A few days later, Bai Chao stood at the entrance of the Guogong mansion. A servant came over and said, the little lady who brought it here is at the entrance of the Duke's mansion. Go on the side. Bai Chao raised her head and said, I'm here to find my family. I heard that the family lost a child 15 years ago. The servant couldn't help but swallow his saliva and said, don't just talk nonsense. This is not the place where you can lie. Bai Jiao said, I'm not lying again. Just go ask and you'll know. The servant said, then wait here. Master, madam, it's not good anymore. There's a person at the gate who says they're looking for relatives. The Duke said, I understand. You have someone throw her out. Lady Guogong said, Master, wait a moment. Let's take a look. The Duke said, Madam, haven't we seen much in these years? Lady Guogong said, what if she is? If she doesn't take photos, she's afraid of 10,000. The Duke said, okay, bring her in. Bai Chao followed the maid into the front hall. As soon as Bai Chao walked in, Duke Ningguo was about to speak. But at this moment, Bai Chao raised her head. The Duke of Ningguo and the Lady of Guogong were stunned in the same place, because the white rice cake resembled the young lady of Guogong very much. At this moment, the lady of the kingdom said, Child, what evidence can prove that you are my daughter? Bai Chao Xian took out the swaddle on her body from the package when the owner of Bai Island picked her up. As soon as they saw the swaddling clothes, Duke Ning and his wife immediately stood up. Lady Ningguo said, Child, can I take this for a while? Bai Chao didn't speak, just nodded. The Lady of Ningguo immediately took the swaddle into her ear chamber. Lady Ningguo asked someone to bring a pair of scissors and remove the swaddle. A pattern was exposed inside the swaddle, which was embroidered inside when Lady Ningguo made clothes for her child back then. Lady Ningguo ran out and hugged Bai Chao, saying, My child. Master, this is our child, this is our fragrance. Duke Ningguo, with tears in his eyes, ran over and hugged them, saying, My daughter has finally returned home. Bai Chao hugged Lady Ningguo with both hands and shouted, I finally see my family. However, there was no joy in her eyes, only silence. After a while, Duke Ning advised his wife and said, Madam, today is a joyful day, you can't cry anymore. Xian is still here. Lady Ningguo wiped her tears and said, That's right. Today is the day when Xin returns. I should be happy. Master, let's have dinner together tonight and let everyone know that Xin has returned. Is that okay? Okay. Everything depends on Madam, said Duke Ning. Lady Ningguo tightly gripped the hand of Bai Caoxia and said, Xian, I'll have the servants clean up your room. I'll take you to rest later. By evening, your brothers and sisters will all be back. They must be happy that you can come back. Bai Chao lowered her head and said to Lady Ningguo, Everything is up to Lady Ningguo. Upon hearing that Bai Chao was still called Madam, Lady Ningguo stared into Bai Chao's eyes and said, Xian, you should call me Madam. Ah Nyang, Bai Chao looked at Lady Ningguo and said Lady Ningguo's eyes couldn't help but turn red again. She didn't turn her head, stabilized her mind, and said to Bai Chao, Mom, I'll take you to your room. follow mom. The Duke of Ningwa watched as his wife walked away with the white grass and said to the butler, go and ask the young masters to come back, and say that Shinshin has come back. The butler said, yes, Marquis. Chapter 6. Marquis' Mansion. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Lady Ningwa brought Bai Chao to a courtyard and said to her, this Eason courtyard has been prepared for you by my mother since a long time ago, and I have been hoping that one day you will come back. Fortunately, heaven has eyes, and you have really returned to my mother's side. Take a look, there's anything you don't like. My mom is making changes for you. Thank you, mother, I really like it, said Bai Chao. Lady Ningwa held the hand of Bai Chao and walked into the courtyard, saying, this is your young lady. You should take good care of her, okay? Yes, madam. I have seen the young lady before, replied the servant in the garden. Xinr, if any of the maids are not doing well, tell your mother and she will replace them for you, said Lady Ningwa. Bai Cao Xia made the maids all up and said to Lady Ningwa, what my mother picked is naturally good. Go rest, Xinr. When we have dinner, I'll send someone to teach you, said Lady Ningwa. Bai Chao bowed to Lady Ningwa and said, yes. My daughter is leaving first. Let's go back and rest, Mom. Lady Ningwa nodded with a smile and watched as Bai Chao walked into the room. The lady of Duke Ning walked into the lobby and happened to hear Duke Ning instructing others to investigate the past decade or so of Bai Chao. After the others left, the wife of Duke Ning said to Duke Ning, Master, why do you want to investigate Shinshin's past? Ning Guogong said, I want to check how Shinshin has been in the past. Lady Ningwa thought for a moment and said, Master, I don't agree. Shinshin has just returned, what do you want her to think? Master, as long as Shinshin comes back, I don't care about anything else. Duke Ning looked at his wife and said, okay, I'll listen to her. Duke Ning stood up and slowly embraced his wife. On this side, the servants waited by the carriage of Prince Ning. When Ning Qing went to court, the servants in the mansion told Ning Qing, Crown Prince, Miss has returned. The master asked you to go home early today. Miss, you're back. But Shinshin found her. Ning Qing said. The servant replied, yes, I found the young lady. Go back to the mansion, Ning Qing said. Ning Qing returned to the Daofu and went directly to the lobby to inquire with Duke Ning if the situation was true. And the Duke of Ningwa indicated that Ningxin had indeed found it. At this moment, the second prince of Ning Mansion, the twin brother of Bai Chao, ran in from outside the door and asked, Xin, has Xin really come back? But the Duke of Ningwa scolded, look at what you look like. Shinshin just returned today, and our family will have a meal together. First, it's to celebrate Shinshin's return, second, let Shinshin recognize her family. Shinshin just came back today. What's there to say tomorrow? Do you all know? My son has returned, the two of them arched their hands and said. In the evening, the servant walked into the dock carriage hall with Bai Chao, and saw Duke Ning, his wife, and two men and a woman sitting at the table. The lady of Ningwa saw Bai Chao walking in, holding her hand and introducing her one by one, this is your big brother, Ning Qing, your second brother, Ning Su, and your sister, Ning Wen. After Ning Qing and the others bowed to Bai Chao one by one, Bai Chao said, I have seen all the brothers and sisters. Lady Ningwa asked Bai Chao to sit next to her and said, today, our family has finally reunited. And instructed Ning Qing and the others, Xin has just returned, you must take on the responsibility of being older brothers, you know. Ning Qing and the others all arched their hands and said, yes. At this moment, Duke Ningwa said, all right, Shinshin should be hungry. Let's eat. Bai Chao gave a slight smile. After dinner, Lady Ningwa wanted to send the white rice cake back. Ning Su said, Mom, let me and big brother send my sister back. We happen to be familiar with her. Ning Wen said, I also want to send my sister back. Lady Ningwa said, Xin, what do you think? Let the big brother and his team take me back, and let my mother go back and rest, replied Bai Chao. The Lady of Ningwa said, okay. Duke Ning and his wife left the hall hand in hand. Bai Chao and the others also left the hall together. Walking on the road, Ning Qing said to Bai Chao Xian, sister, if you have anything, you can go to Tianwu Academy to find me. Ning Su and Ning Wen also said, sister can also find me. Thank you, brothers and sisters, Bai Chao Xian said after Ning Qing and the others sent the white grass to the eastern courtyard. Ning Su and Ning Wen returned to their respective courtyards one after another. Ning Qing arrived at Mr. Ning's study and said, Dad, do you need my son to check Xin's past? Mr. Ning pondered for a moment and said, I promised your mother that I won't investigate. However, for the sake of the Ningwa mansion and also for the sake of Xin, please go and investigate. Don't let your mother know. Ning Qing replied, my son shall. Dad, my son is leaving first. Let's go, said Duke Ning. Ning Qing left the study in order to go down, secretly investigate the past of the young lady. The next day, as soon as Bai Chao had breakfast, Mrs. Ning walked in with her servants holding some clothes and accessories. Mrs. Ning held the hand of Bai Chao and said, Xiner, I have brought you some fabric and jewelry. Do you like it? Bai Chao said, thank you, mother. At this moment, Ning Wen walked in and said, Mom, sister. Mom, these clothes are so beautiful, I also want them. Madam Ning said, your sister has just returned, let her choose first. I will give it to you later. Mother, let my sister choose first, Bai Chao Xian said hastily. Madam Ning said, Xiner, you choose first. Be orderly in your growth and development. Wenner, be obedient. Ning Wen said, sister, I'm just playing around. I'll help my sister choose. Ning Wen said, then picked up the fabric and compared it to the white grass. While comparing, he said, this one looks good, and this one looks good too. Mrs. Ning smiled and looked at the two of them. Mammy Ning said, the eldest and second young ladies are worthy of being sisters. Mrs. Ning said, let's go and let their two sisters choose here. Yes, madam, replied Grandma Ning. Mrs. Ning left the eastern courtyard with her people. Bai Chao Xian looked sideways and then went back to choose the fabric with Ning Wen. On this side, Mrs. Ning returned to the hall and saw Duke Ning sitting there. She said, Xiner is back, and our family has finally reunited. Ning Guogong said, yes. It can be considered as Madam's illness. Madam Ning picked up the teacup, smiled, and said to Duke Ning, yes. By the way, master, it's time for me to come back. If I knew that Shiner had come back, I would also be very happy. When my mother comes back, our family will go to the temple to fulfill our wishes, said Duke Ning. Mrs. Ning said, we all listen to the master. After a while, Mrs. Ning said during dinner, your grandmother is coming back soon. Upon hearing this, Ning Qing and the others looked at each other and said, Mom, really? When will grandma get home? Duke Ning said, your grandmother will probably say it the day after tomorrow. Mrs. Ning said to Bai Chao, Xiner, your grandmother has also been looking forward to your return home. Xiner, I will definitely be filial to my grandmother, Bai Chao said to the couple of Duke Ningwa. Chapter 7. Meeting Family. You are listening at novelfull.audio. That morning, Duke Ning and his family were waiting at the door. Suddenly, a sound of horse hooves came from afar. The sound of horse hooves was getting closer and closer, and a carriage was seen parked at the entrance of the Duke's mansion. At this moment, a kind-hearted elderly man emerged from the carriage. Upon seeing this, Duke Ning and Lady Ning quickly walked forward and said, Mother, you have worked hard all the way. The elderly woman of Ningwa said, it's not hard. Ning Qing and the others walked forward and bowed to the old lady of Ningwa one by one, saying, my grandson has seen my grandmother. Mrs. Ning quickly helped Ning Qing and the others up and said, get up quickly, grandmother's good grandchildren. At this moment, Mrs. Ning noticed the white grass beside her and said, "Who is this?" Madam Ning said, "Mother, let's go ahead and talk about it first." Everyone helped the old lady into the Ning show hall, and Mrs. Ning said, "Mom, at this moment, Xiner has returned." Bai Caoxia walked up and said, "Xiner, give my grandmother my regards." Mrs. Ning stood up, picked up the white grass, and with tears in her eyes, said, "Xiner, my Xiner has returned." Upon seeing this, everyone quickly dissuaded and said, "Grandmother, this is a great occasion and I should be happy." Mrs. Ning wiped her tears and said, "I should be happy. In a few days, our whole family will go to the temple to fulfill our wishes. Thank you, Bodhisattva, for bringing our family together." Madam Ning said, "The master also said he wants to go to the temple to fulfill his wish. Mother and the master want to go together. It's Dragon Boat Festival in a few days, why not celebrate it?" Mrs. Ning said, "Okay. You can arrange it for me with the most peace of mind." At this moment, Grandma Ning beside Madam Ning said, "Madam, Lord Gua, Madam, young masters and ladies, the food is ready." Ning Guagong said, "Mother, let's go have dinner first." Mrs. Ning said, "Let's go." Xiner is next to her grandmother. Bai Chao Fu helped herself and said, "Yes." Bai Chao walked up to the old lady and helped her. When they arrived at the dining hall, Bai Chao sat next to the old lady, while the others sat down one by one. At the dinner table, the old lady had someone constantly serve rice cakes with vegetables. Duke Ning said, "Mom, please eat quickly. It won't be good when the food cools down. Also, the dishes you served to Xiner are almost finished." Ning Wen said, "Grandmother, you also love wen air. Is that okay?" The old lady said, "Okay, okay. I also love wen air. You guys, I love you all." The old lady asked someone to pick up each person's favorite dish and said to Bai Chao, "Xiner, just tell your grandmother what you like, you know." Xiner knows. Bai Chao smiled and said after finishing the meal, the old lady said, "I'm tired. You all go back. Lord Gua, stay." "Yes," said the crowd. After everyone left, the old lady sat on it and said, "Son, you checked Xiner's past." Duke Ningwa said, "Son, send someone to investigate. It's no different from what Xiner said." "That's good." Ning Guagong said, "Mother, since it's okay, my son will leave first. My son won't disturb your rest. Go ahead. By the way, it's Dragon Boat Festival in a few days. Let Qing'er and her team take Xiner to the street for a stroll." Duke Ning said, "Yes. My son is leaving." On this side, Bai Chao returned to the Eason courtyard and asked everyone to step down, leaving only the shadow of Sangji's substitute. "Miss, someone has gone to investigate," said the shadow as it approached the white grass. "I understand, everything is going according to plan," said Bai Chao. The shadow said, "Yes." On the Dragon Boat Festival, Ning Qin took them to the street. Along the way, Ning Wen was very happy. "Sister, we can go see a variety show later." Ning Su had a conversation and said, "Cut, what's good about juggling?" Ning Wen retorted, "Then don't follow us later." Ning Su couldn't help but widen his eyes at this moment. Ning Qin interrupted the argument between Ning Qin and Ning Wen, saying, "All right, you two. Shiner hasn't said where she's going yet. You two should be quiet." Bai Chao said, "I listened to Big Brother." Ning Wen took Bai Caoya's hand and said, "Sister, go to see the acrobatics. The acrobatics are beautiful. After watching it, we can go to the Lark Tower to eat dim sum." Ning Su said, "Does someone really want to watch acrobatics, or does they want to see someone?" Ning Wen widened her eyes and wanted to twist Ning Su. Ning Qin pressed Ning Wen's hand and said, "Since Shiner doesn't have any place to go, let's go see the acrobatics first. After watching the acrobatics, we'll go take a stroll and then go to Young Tower." Ning Wen cheered, okay. Ning Su couldn't help but whisper, I knew it. Bai Jiao looked at Ning Wen's smile and couldn't help but think of the time spent with Bai Xiao. At this moment, Ning Qing asked Bai Qiao, Exiner, what do you think? I'll listen to my older brother, Bai Qiao said. After listening, Ning Qing couldn't help but smile and said, that's settled. Ning Qing and his group were walking on the street, while Ning Su and Ning Wen were still discussing the exciting part of the acrobatics just now. Ning Qing walked beside Bai Qiao and said, did the acrobatics just now look good? Do you like it? Bai Qiao said, it looks very nice, I really like it. Ning Qing said to Bai Qiao, just like it. Exiner, we are a family, don't be afraid. You can tell us anything. Big brother, I got it, Bai Qiao said with a smile. At this moment, Ning Wen walked over from the side and said, big brother, sister. Let's go to Yunk Tower. I'm tired. Ning Qing said, okay. Ning Wen held Bai Qiao's arm and said, we're going to Yunk Tower. Let's hurry up and don't be that idiot, second brother. Ning Wen, who are you talking about as a fool? I'm your second brother, said Ning Su, waving his paws behind him. Ning Wen dragged the white grass forward, and Ning Su followed closely. Ning Qing smiled and watched them play around from behind. When Ning Wen walked into the Yunk Tower, she met a young master. When Ning Wen saw this young master, he couldn't help but blush, and this young master lowered his head when he saw Ning Wen. Although the young master lowered his head, his ears were red. Just as they were standing, Ning Su walked in. When Ning Su saw the young master, he couldn't help but raise his eyebrows and said, hey, isn't this the second young master Wen Ji? What is the young master Wen doing here? Just as Ning Su wanted to tease Wen Ji, Ning Wen twisted Ning Su hard from behind. Ning Shudong's face was somewhat twisted. Ning Su walked quickly to Wen Ji's side and hugged his shoulder, saying, come on, young master Wen. Let's have a competition and throw a pitcher. The loser will have to drink. Chapter 8. Meeting Under Flowers. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. As Ning Su spoke, he took Wen Ji to the place where the teapot was poured. Ning Wen's face furrowed together, and just as Wen Ji turned around, he raised a smile that was both skin and flesh. Ning Su saw that Wen Ji had turned his head, so he turned his head around with his hand. Ning Wen and Ning Su walked away and whispered, when we go back, I'll beat Ning Su hard. Sister, let's go to the private room, Ning Wen exhaled and said to Bai Qiao. When Ning Wen and Bai Qiao sat in the private room, Bai Qiao joked, that young master Wen was really good. Looking just now. Ning Wen couldn't help blushing and said, sister, why are you teasing me? Ning Wen walked quickly into the private room, and Bai Qiao smiled behind her. When they were all sitting in the private room, Ning Qing followed and asked, where is Ning Su? Bai Qiao glanced at Ning Wen and said with a smile, just now we met a young master Wen. Second brother, and that young master Wen went to throw a pot. As Ning Qing was about to speak, Ning Wen interrupted, big brother, let's go to the temple to pray for blessings in a few days. Tianma temple must be very lively in a few days. Ning Qing looked at Bai Qiao and said, third sister, do you want to go? Bai Qiao looked at Ning Wen and said, I want to go and take a look. Ning Wen couldn't help but cheer when she heard Bai Qiao say so. At this moment, Ning Su walked in, followed by a young master. Ning Su walked over to the table, sat down, and said to the young master behind him, I said, Wen heir, you also saw my big brother. You're not leaving yet. Wen Ji looked embarrassed. At this moment, Ning Qing stood up and said, Ning Su, don't be impolite. Brother Wen, today is fate. Let's get together. Wen Ji replied, however, it is disrespectful. Ning Su rolled his eyes and snorted. Ning Wen pinched Ning Su fiercely under the table. Ning Su took a cold breath and quickly moved to the side. At this moment, fireworks were set off outside the window. Ning Wen walked to the window and looked at the fireworks outside, while Wen Ji's eyes looked at Ning Wen. Ning Su looked at the two of them, although his expression was somewhat disdainful, he never said anything. After a few days of Mrs. Ning's birthday, each official sent someone to send congratulatory gifts. Mrs. Ning sat at the top, while Ning Wen stood next to her. Today is my 80th birthday. Thank you to all the ladies for coming. In addition to my birthday, it is also a great day for my granddaughter to return to the Ningwa mansion. Wenner, go call out your sister. Mrs. Ning patted Ning Wen's hand and said. Yes, grandmother. Ning Wen slightly bent down and walked towards the backyard. All the ladies looked at each other. At this moment, Ning Wen, dressed in full attire, slowly arrived and leaned down, saying, I have seen my grandmother, and my granddaughter wishes her a long and boundless life. Mrs. Ning smiled and said, okay. Xiner, I've seen all the ladies before. Bai Chao turned around again and said, Ning Xian has seen all the ladies, and they are doing well. After Bai Chao spoke, the lobby was quiet and elegant. After a moment, a lady spoke out, congratulations to the old lady for finding Miss Ning. When Miss Ning saluted us just now, I thought the fairy had descended to earth. At this moment, the ladies all reacted and congratulated, Miss Ning is really outstanding. You are fortunate, madam. Madam Ning smiled and said, ladies and gentlemen, you all have high praise. All right. Wenner, take your sister to play. Don't be confined here. I'll just talk to the ladies. Bai Chao and Ning Wen both took their clothes and retreated. Bai Chao and Ning Wen were walking on the road in the backyard. Sister, we are going to the temple the day after tomorrow, just in time for the temple fair. Sister, the temple fair is so fun, you will definitely like it. When the time comes, I will take you to stroll. Okay. I'll trouble Wenner then. The sisters walked in the backyard holding hands with each other. From a distance, they really looked like sisters growing up together. On the day of the temple fair, people from Ningwa Mansion arrived early at the temple. Under the leadership of the abbot, everyone in the Ningwa Mansion fulfilled their wishes. Sister, the wisteria flowers behind the temple have bloomed. Let me take you to take a look, Ning Wen said as he pulled the white grass towards the back mountain. Bai Chao and Ning Wen walked to the back mountain and indeed saw patches of wisteria flowers. The sunlight shone through the branches and leaves of the wisteria and onto the petals, illuminating the clothes of the white grass and Ning Wen, creating a beautiful scene. The young master behind the tree was deeply attracted by this scene, his eyes filled with amazement. At this moment, the young master's servant Lu Kong shouted not far away, young master, here you are. Bai Chao and Ning Wen heard some movement behind them, turned around and saw several people running towards them not far away. Sister, it's getting late. It's time to go back. Otherwise, Grandma and the others would have been worried. Bai Chao said and pulled Ning Wen down the mountain. When Bai Chao and Ning Wen disappeared, Lu Kong walked up to the young master with some people and said, young master, I finally found you. You can't leave me alone next time. If something happens to you, how can you let me live? Okay. Lu Kong, this young master asked you, did you see the girl standing under the wisteria flower just now? Lu Kong touched his head and said, yes, there were two girls just now. Can you see clearly the appearance of the girl with a wisteria hairpin on her head? Master, I'm too far away from those two girls to see clearly. Tai Guangue, young master, heard that Lu Kong did not see the girl's appearance clearly, so he walked towards the position where Bai Chao had just stood. As soon as I walked under the wisteria flower, I saw a wisteria hairpin. Tai Guangue picked up the hairpin, carefully looked at it, and said, Lu Kong, go ask which official female relatives have come to the temple today. Yes, I'll take care of it now. In this room, Bai Chao and Ning Wen returned to the temple and collided head-on with Ning Su. Ning Su said, come on, I'll take you to taste the vegetarian food here. Wait a moment, Ning Wen, where's the hairpin on your head? Bai Chao followed Ning Su's gaze and looked at Ning Wen's head. Ning Wen also touched the hairpin on his head and said, is it missing a bauhinia flower hairpin? It shouldn't have fallen on the back mountain, right? Upon hearing these words, Ning Su couldn't help but take a cold breath and said, you two should search on the road first, and I will take someone to search later. It's okay, it must have fallen somewhere, you can definitely find it, Bai Chao advised as Ning Wen was about to shed tears. Ning Su and his companions found the place where the two of them had just been admiring flowers, and saw a young master standing there, holding a hairpin in the style of a bauhinia flower. Ning Su quickly walked forward and said, young master, I am Ning Su from the Ningguo mansion. The hairpin in your hand was accidentally lost by my sister. Can you please return it? Tai Guangue raised his eyebrows and said, oh. Young Master Ning has evidence to prove that this hairpin belongs to Miss Ning. On the hairpin, there is the imprint of our Ningguo mansion, which is a majestic eagle. Tai Guangue really saw an eagle at the top of the hairpin, so he handed it to Ning Su and said, please be careful next time, miss from your mansion. Not every time someone returns the hairpin. Thank you very much, young master. If there is anything that is not illegal or disorderly in the future, you can go to the Ningguo mansion to find me. Chapter 9. Ning Wen's severe illness. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. After Ning Su finished speaking, he turned around and left. After Ning Su left, Lu Kong brought people back. Young master, I heard that only the Ningguo mansion came to offer incense today. There's no need to investigate further. I know which family's female relatives it is. When you go back, you can check if the miss from Ningguo mansion has an engagement. Lu Kong only replied, yes. Tai Guangue looked around at the bauhinia flowers and led the people down the mountain. In this room, Ning Su walked down the mountain and saw the white rice cakes from a distance. When Ning Su walked up to the Bai Chao and the others, he saw a hairpin with a bauhinia flower in his palm. Ning Wen saw this hairpin and happily held it, saying, second brother. You're really amazing, you'll find it in no time. Alright, don't worry. Since the hairpin has been found, I think it's still early. Why don't we continue to eat vegetarian food? This can be considered as a way to surprise you, that's great. Bai Chao and Ning Wen both spoke in unison and said, you're quite a second brother. Ning Su and the three of them walked together towards the direction of the dining hall. As they walked, Ning Su teased Ning Wen, causing him to ignore the incident of finding a hairpin just now and still want to fight with Ning Su. On this side, when Tai Guangue and others returned to the palace, they saw a gorgeous lady sitting with injured hands. Tai Guangue waved his hand and the palace people all retreated. I have seen my mother before. Do you still see me as the Empress Mother in your eyes? When you talk about choosing a concubine, you run outside the palace. Do you want to anger my family to death? Upon seeing the situation, Tai Guangue hurriedly assisted Empress Dowager Lu and said, Mother, I know you are doing it for my good. Don't worry, I will do it as soon as possible, okay? Empress Dowager Lu glanced at Tai Guangue and said, this is what the Emperor said. The AI family will trust the Emperor again. If the Emperor makes a mistake, the AI family will move to Huangjue Temple and no longer care about your affairs. After Empress Dowager Lu finished speaking, she walked out. The Emperor quickly bid farewell to the Empress Dowager. After the Empress Dowager left, Lu Kong came in and reported, Your Majesty, I have inquired and found out that the young ladies of the Ningguo mansion have not been allowed to be assigned to others. I understand. Lu Kong, go to the Ningguo mansion to proclaim a sacred decree, Tai Guangue said, then waved his hand to let Lu Kong withdraw. When the Duke of Ningguo and his companions returned, Lu Kong arrived at the Duke's mansion with a decree. Upon seeing the imperial edict, Duke Ningguo knelt down. I saw Lu Kongxian deliver the imperial edict to allow Miss Ningguo to enter the palace. After receiving the imperial edict, Duke Ningwa congratulated Lu Kong and said, Duke Ningwa is so lucky. Your daughter is the only concubine who has entered the palace to this day. Maybe you can become a royal relative in the future. Duke Ningwa arched his hand and said, I dare not dare not. Lu Gonggong, this is a small gesture from a lower official. Please keep it for tea. Lu Kong patted the silver in his hand and smiled as he put it into his sleeve. Duke Ning was polite and the miscellaneous family left. Duke Ning said, I'll see you off. After Lu Kong and others left, Ning Wen couldn't hold on and fainted on the body of Bai Chao. Everyone quickly helped Ning Wen into her room. Everyone looked solemnly at Ning Wen who had fainted, and Lady Ning of the kingdom burst into tears. After a while, Ning Wen slowly woke up, and everyone gathered around Ning Wen's bed. When Ning Wen saw Mrs. Ning, tears welled up and she cried, saying she wouldn't marry. Madam Ning also cried while holding Ning Wen, and everyone knew that there was no way to change it. Late at night, Ning Wen held Mrs. Ning and cried for a long time before falling deeply asleep. Duke Ning then asked others to go back. Bai Chao returned to the room and sat on a chair, knowing that the time for her to live alone was approaching. The next day, Ning Wen woke up without eating or drinking, and said to Mrs. Ning, Mother, my daughter is fine. We'll be fine in a few days. Ning Wen said as she shed tears. And Wen Ji also knew about the imperial decree on this side. Wen Ji said to the servant, Go find the second young master of Ningwa, and tell him that I have something to discuss and invite him to the tavern. After Ning Su arrived, Wen Ji bowed deeply and said, Can you tell me how Wen Er is doing now? Ning Su sighed deeply at Wen Ji's words and advised, Wen Er, you better not ask. You should forget about your relationship with Wen Er. This will be good for both you and Wen Er. Wen Ji didn't get up and said, I just want to know if Miss Wen is okay. As for anything else, I have nothing else to ask for. Ning Su couldn't resist Wen Ji, so he told her about the current situation. Upon hearing this, Wen Ji begged Ning Su to let him meet Ning Wen. Ning Su originally wanted to refuse, but as soon as he thought about Ning Wen lying in bed without eating or drinking, he agreed. As night approached, Wen Ji walked over to Ning Wen's bed and looked at her sleeping, tears unconsciously streaming down her face. At this moment, Ning Wen slowly opened her eyes and saw Wen Ji. She couldn't help but say, Wen Ji, why are you here? Wen knows, I'll see if you're doing well. Upon hearing these words, Ning Wen shed tears unconsciously and said, Wen Ji, I may not be able to marry you anymore. I'm sorry. Wen Ji hugged Ning Wen and said, It's not your fault, it's only because our fate is not enough, and even more so, I can't take you away. Ning Wen looked at Wen Ji and said, I don't blame you. We all have things we can't give up. We can't hurt others just because of ourselves. Forget me. Upon hearing this, Wen Ji could only hold Ning Wen tightly. The next day, Mrs. Ning went to Ning Wen's room and saw that she was sick. She immediately called for a doctor. After the doctor arrived, he finished his pulse and said, Madam Ning, could you take a step to speak? Miss Ning has a heart disease at this time, and as the saying goes, a good heart disease requires a heart doctor. If Miss Ning's heart disease is not good, she may have a life-threatening worry. Upon hearing these words, Madam Ning couldn't help but shake her body. After regaining his composure, he said, Thank you, doctor. Please keep your mouth shut. The doctor arched his hand to ensure that today's matter would not be leaked. Madam Ning asked the maid to take the doctor out. At this moment, Ning Wen shouted, Nyang, and Mrs. Ning immediately went to see Ning Wen. Ning Wen advised Madam Ning to understand everything the doctor had just said. She also said that she just couldn't accept it for a while and that she would recover in a few days. She advised Madam Ning not to worry. Mrs. Ning couldn't help but shed tears as she listened to what Ning Wen said. He only said, okay. When Wen Er is okay, I'll have your second brother take you outside for a walk. After waiting for 2 days, Ning Wen's illness became increasingly severe, and Mrs. Ning couldn't sit still. Madame Ning approached Duke Ning and said, "Sir, please don't let Wen'er enter the palace, okay?" Ning Guogong did not directly answer Mrs. Ning, but instead replied, "Is Wen'er's illness still not good? When that girl's illness is good, let Ning Qing and the others go and take a stroll together." Mrs. Ning saw the Duke of Ningguo talking about it from left to right, and slowly said, "Do you know that the doctor said that Wen'er has a heart disease and she will die? Master, I beg you. Don't let me give the white-haired person to the black-haired person, okay?" Upon hearing Mrs. Ning's words, Duke Ning's face turned pale. At this moment, Mrs. Ning walked over and said, "I heard your arguments from a long distance. Do you still think your home is not chaotic enough?" Chapter 10. The Entry of Cayratia Japonica into the Palace. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. After seeing the old lady coming, the couple of Duke Ning and his wife all bowed together. The old lady then said, "All right, I heard what you just said. Miss Wen is seriously ill now, so she cannot enter the palace." The Duke of Ningguo said, "But, mother, the imperial decree has allowed the young ladies of Ningguo Mansion to enter the palace. We can't resist the decree. Even the Empress Dowager has given rewards these days, if we resist the decree." Madame Ning interrupted Duke Ning's words, "Then we can't ignore Lady Wen's life. Since the imperial decree says to let the young ladies of Duke Ning's mansion enter the palace, but it doesn't say who it is. Didn't Miss Xian just come back a few days ago?" Upon hearing this, Duke Ningguo felt it was inappropriate. Madame Ning looked at Duke Ning's expression and said, "Let's talk about the matter with Miss Xian and see how she makes a decision." The couple of Duke Ning stopped talking. After a while, Bai Chao followed the servants to the hall. The lady of Ningguo explained the matter in detail and asked if Bai Chao was willing to enter the palace on behalf of Ning Wen. Bai Chao Xian glanced at the expressions of everyone in the hall and said, "I earnestly request your granddaughter to consider whether she can give an answer to our ancestors in 2 days." The lady of Ningguo said, "Go ahead and consider carefully." Bai Cao Xia slightly supported herself and said, "Granddaughter, please leave." In the evening, Mrs. Ning arrived at Bai Chao's room and said, "Xianer, come here. I haven't even spoken well to you yet." As she spoke, Mrs. Ning burst into tears and said, "I'm sorry for losing you since I was young. But Xianer, please help your sister. She's not going to be able to continue." Bai Jian looked at Mrs. Ning and said, "Mom, don't worry. My daughter is willing to go to the palace on behalf of my younger sister. I know how well my younger sister treats me." Although Mrs. Ning was shedding tears, there was an uncontrollable joy in her eyes. Bai Jian watched this scene, but her heart was completely calm. After Mrs. Ning left, she thought to herself, "Bai Chao, you are truly hypocritical. I have to see this scene to calculate without hesitation. That's good, the medicinal herbs are almost in hand. You helped them, and they gave you medicinal herbs, which can be considered as a mutual debt." The next day, Bai Chao Xian said that she was willing to enter the palace for Ning Wen, but there was one condition. "I was born to love collecting various types of medicinal herbs, and I want to live alone for 1,000 years. The Duke and Lady of Ningguo looked at each other, but the Lady of Ningguo made a decision and decided to bring the white rice to the palace the day before entering. Upon hearing these words, Bai Chao breathed a sigh of relief and said, "Thank you, my ancestors, and my parents. Xianer, please leave." The Duke of Ningguo called out to Bai Chao and asked her to raise any further needs. Bai Chao turned around and said with a smile, "Xianer doesn't have anything she wants, she just has a slight preference for medicinal herbs." After that, she withdrew. On the day when Bai Chao was about to enter the palace, Ning Qing and Ning Su saw the sedan chair on the Bai Chao seat, and their faces immediately changed. Fortunately, the two of them restrained their expressions in time, so that no one could see any clues. After everyone had left, Ning Su rushed into the lobby and questioned, "Father, Mother, why did Xianer become the sedan chair for entering the palace?" Upon hearing these words, Lady Ning shed tears, and Duke Ning also sighed and said, "One heir fell ill the day after receiving the imperial edict. The doctor said it was a mental illness and there would be a concern for her life. Do you think I am willing to sacrifice my other daughter?" Upon hearing the explanation, Ning Su's expression became frustrated, while Ning Qing's expression also turned much paler. The sedan chair has already arrived at the palace, and the nanny in the palace leads all the palace people to pay respects to Bai Chao. Bai Chao made everyone up and asked Mama to handle the affairs of Qingyi Hall. Bai Chao sat on the bed in the palace, listening to the people whispering about the beauty of her consort, which impressed the emperor at first sight. At night, the emperor arrived at the Qingyi Hall, picked up the shipa of white rice cakes, and waved his hand to let all the palace members go down. At this point, the two spent a night together. The next day, after serving the emperor, Bai Chao went to the morning court and went to pay respects to the Empress Dowager. At the Shokong Hall, Bai Chao Xian paid her respects to the Empress Dowager, who gave her some rewards and said, "Now that you have entered the palace, you must carefully spread branches and leaves for the royal family." After Bai Chao Xian finished listening to the Empress Dowager's teachings, she returned to the Qingyi Hall. For several consecutive days, the emperor rested in the Qingyi Hall, and everyone in the palace knew the degree of favor that concubine Ning had received. On this day, the officials of the Ministry of Personnel brought some palace officials to supplement the people of the Qingyi Hall. Grandma Ning went to seek advice from Bai Chao, and Bai Chao let them in. When the palace attendants came in, Grandma Ning said, "Everyone look up." As the palace attendants raised their heads, Bai Chao saw mulberry branches mixed in with the new palace attendants. Bai Chao said to Ning, "Mama, the Qingyi palace doesn't need so many people, so I need the palace maid at the edge. Let her fan me normally." Ning Mama said, "Yes." Then she turned around and asked the people from the Ministry of Personnel for the palace maid. At night, Bai Chao had someone tell the people in the living room that her body had turned red today and she was not suitable to serve the emperor. After dinner, Bai Chao Xian pushed everyone out and turned around to see Sangji kneeling on the ground, saying, "Sangji has seen Mississippi, miss, you have suffered." Bai Chao quickly picked up Sangji and said, "Sangji, why are you here? How is sister doing?" Sangji said, "Miss has been detoxified, but her body is a bit weak. But Dr. Su said that Miss only needs to take good care of herself for a period of time." "That's good." At that time, Dr. Su said that my sister's memory would go wrong, but she forgot something, Bai Chao said with a smile. Sangji lowered her head when she heard Bai Chao say these words. "But what's wrong? Tell me," Bai Caoxia asked anxiously as she looked at the mulberry branches. Sangji could only say, "Miss, I have forgotten about you." Bai Chao was stunned, pondered for a moment, and then chuckled lightly, "It's okay. I'll handle the things here first, it's okay." Sangji fell silent when she saw such a white catnip. The white catnip waved its hand and Sangji retreated.